Obsidian Entertainment has been working on their fantasy action RPG for years, and it's finally here. But will it hold up against other games in the genre, or even other games by Obsidian? Hi, I'm the Dove, and I have an unhealthy love of video games, and today we'll be looking at Avowed. Now, there obviously are going to be some comparisons to Skyrim, although the developers of Avowed have said they were trying to do something different. And while you can't deny the common thread, the games have plenty of differences from one another. And like other Bethesda and Obsidian games with similar themes, there is plenty of room for both in the cockles of gamers' hearts. Yes, both are RPGs that are set in the fantasy setting, and both have the perspective option, and on the surface, similar combat and dialogue formats. But Avowed is its own thing. Obsidian released Outer Worlds, which is an RPG where you hop from planet to planet in a starship, but it is nothing like Bethesda's Starfield. I would say it is similar in the differences between Avowed and Skyrim. So let's focus on Avowed. The game starts with a narrator quickly summarizing what is going on and then transitions into your connection to everything. Then it subtly moves to your character's background story and creation, making it feel like part of the actual introduction. It's a great way for an RPG to get going, to be honest. We all get stuck in the character creator for far too long, and then you get into the intro to the stories in an RPG, and you can go hours with barely any action. Like I said, Avowed intertwines the creator and background, all the while keeping the intro and the overall plot very concise. Besides some choices you make in your character creator about your past, Avowed allows the character to respond to dialogue choices along the way to help paint your past. So throughout the game, you'll be adding to the history of your character with some answers to NPCs' questions. It helps keep the pacing of the narrative while allowing you to explore and blow crap up when you want. The process of allowing those little nuggets of your character's past to unfold throughout the story feels more natural and way less daunting than games that hit you with a novel's worth of explanation. The main plot of the game is that you, as the envoy to your king, are researching a spreading plague called the Dream Scourge. The island you go to is supposed to be an untamed port where people with either checkered past or those who just want a fresh start flock to. No real laws or government there, but the citizens enjoy that way of life. Not everyone survives in this dog-eat-dog society. Your kingdom has tried to colonize this port because, of course, the king knows what's best for a foreign land he's never been to. Clearly, the folks there are not thrilled about that. As a representative of the king, not all locals will welcome you with open arms, and depending on your actions, they might not be your ally in any way, shape, or form. While you're trying to get to the bottom of the main plot, you're also trying to figure out what is going on with your own character, who is a godlike, a human-looking entity that has some powers of a god. Just think demigod from Greek mythology, only with, less bestiality. You know little about your past, less about the god that created you, and you constantly hear a voice from beyond.
Something happened here. Birth. Voices. Arms building a wall.
This is just the tip of the iceberg, some of the main plots that come together that make Avowed a great title. Now, despite what some of the early reviewers have said, the story is incredibly interesting. It follows a mystery-style format, so uncovering things is part of the fun, and not knowing a lot early on is by design. Avowed uses lore from its series Pillars of Eternity to inspire the stories here. I'm sure you can see some of the allegories going on with some real-world events, but this story is one of the better ones I've experienced in video games for a good while. The combat is where the game exceeds its competition. Say what you will about the environment not interacting with any of your spells or really any kind of physics, but the actual combat is some of the best in the genre. It's reactive, varied, fast-paced, and at the end of the day, it's a lot of fun. There's no relying on real-time mechanics that stop time completely so you can figure out your next moves. There are some instances where you choosing your spells slows things down, but that's it. You'll still have to be very reactive. There is also a good variety in the ways you can approach the game. Like the best RPGs, you can go through a number of different builds, from a glass cannon to just a steel tank. Within that, there are a good assortment of different weapons, from one-handed, two-handed, bow and arrow, and like the Fable series, Avowed isn't afraid to dabble with some firearms in this fantasy world. You can add additional effects and bonuses to weapons at your camp if you have the right ingredients, and just improving your weapons and armor is just as easy. It's one of the many areas in the game where I am very relieved that Obsidian goes with a more user-friendly approach to some of these tedious tasks. There are a lot of systems that feel streamlined from other action RPGs, but perhaps my favorite among them is not having to look through every goddamn crate, shelf, drawer, cupboard, chest, or damned hole in the ground within the entire map. It's also relieving that your inventory's weight is only burdened by weapons and armor sets. Everything else is weightless, allowing, less fidgeting with your stash. With all the variety of builds, weapons, and armor, it influences combat a lot. The actual hands-on combat, as I mentioned, is a lot of fun. It has a good amount of reactivity with your opponents. You'll have to change up your attacks with the varied enemies that you come across. And even if you reload an encounter, it doesn't ever feel like it's the exact same fight. You'll definitely have to adapt and change your approach to what the circumstances dictate. Avowed also doesn't feel like any one particular build is too overpowering. In many RPGs, you can just lean on one stat pretty hard and find your way to success, but in Avowed, I felt like I had to approach encounters with a couple different tricks up my sleeve. The nice part is the game allows you to have two different weapon sets. With the flick of a button, you can switch from having a sword and shield to a wand and firearm, or any number of other combos. Overall, the combat, in my estimation, is where most of Obsidian games shine, and if you liked any of their previous RPGs, I think you will definitely enjoy what they have for Avowed. Where this title shines above most RPGs to me is the immersion. The world that Obsidian created is incredibly beautiful and lifelike, and the deep but not overbearing character stories make you feel like you're in the very lands of the living from the story. Now, when I initially heard that the game was going to be open level rather than open world, my heart sank a bit, thinking that they were going to cheap out with small, discoverable areas and make it kind of linear. But this game definitely feels like an open world with all the nooks and crannies and the exploration that you can do in the different areas available. I didn't feel cheated or like I was playing a small scope RPG. I will say there is a little repetition in the NPC design, but they still felt lifelike. There's still a good variety of characters overall as well, but you could tell there were just a few reused assets there. The aesthetics, the world, and the atmosphere that they created in Avowed is both striking and colorful. It is a welcome sight to the genre, which can get pretty drab at times. I'm no fashion expert, but it's a breath of fresh air. The detail in the city life feel lived in and realistic. There are definitely some trigger points that kill the immersion when you walk past an area over and over and a side quest NPC is shouting the same thing every time you're in the area, well, until you activate that mission. But overall, most things just feel very organic. Not only do I really enjoy the world they built here, but as I mentioned before, the story is very entertaining. I've seen some early reviews talking about how it takes a while for some people to get hooked into what's going on, but I honestly feel that the mystery is what is going to draw a lot of people in, and there are a few different ones going on. I won't get too far into the story, but the multiple layers that are there is what make it work. It's a number of different mysteries wrapped all into an intertwined plot. The game definitely hooked this reviewer, and I think if you like mysteries and RPGs, this is a quality story to follow. Another way the game keeps things immersive is the incredible voice acting. From the close companions to the one-off NPCs, they all do the job well. There's plenty of emotion going on, and you never feel confused as to what the character is ever trying to convey. Personally, I don't feel like I came across any poor performances, but that's all objective, and I am no acting critic by any means. Regardless, I feel like the characters are well thought out and don't overdo it with the backstory. Anytime you get into a conversation with them, it feels like they'll wrap things up before you get bored. Nothing worse than sitting through a character's story and just trying to hit X as fast as possible to move things along. And I never felt like that in the entirety of playing Avowed. There are so many things to enjoy about Avowed, but if I had to pick one of my absolute tops, it would have to be the replayability. Avowed is a lot of fun. The story is interesting, the support cast doesn't weigh you down with their past lives and their boring stories that are attached to them, and the world they created is extremely beautiful. But the replayability is top-notch. There are so many different background stories to pick for your character, multiple different dialogue options that'll change the outcome of the story. And along with all the actions you take, the game's going to end with a pleasing form that showcases all the different choices that you have made and the resulting consequences. To this point, there's over 10 recorded endings for the game, along with all the additional options for your companions and factions. I personally like having different playthroughs, different styles, and different stories that unfold from the same game, and Avowed has that. The biggest criticism from me is that the companions don't do much, and you don't have a lot of options to improve them outside of upgrading a few of their combat abilities. They are great at adding to the story and drawing enemy attention away from you, but they don't honestly do too much damage. Overall, I definitely recommend this for gamers who enjoyed any of the previous Obsidian RPGs. I can't speak too much to Pillars of Eternity fans, but the transition to a 3D RPG format has to grab the attention of some of those fans. The small group of people that I think might not enjoy this, or at least set the expectation bar a little bit too high, are those who are complete Elder Scrolls faithful. If you were hoping for Skyrim 2.0, you're going to be disappointed. Nor should you get too enthusiastic if you thought this was going to be Skyrim New Vegas. Obsidian has been putting their own stamp on the RPG genre for over a decade, and Avowed is a culmination or evolution of all those games rather than a blast from the past. In this reviewer's opinion, I think these middling reviews are absolutely wrong. We are all entitled to our own opinions, but Avowed is its own new fresh title with its own twist on the genre, and I for one enjoyed the hell out of it. It has its own story, it has an established universe that is used from Pillars of Eternity, the combat's incredibly fun and adaptive, choices actually matter, and there is so much replayability in this game to keep you coming back for more. This is an absolute gem, and I am not going to back down from that. If you like RPGs, if you like the fantasy setting, or if you just want to change things up from some of the previous games you played and have been disappointed by, I think Avowed is a breath of fresh air, not only for the RPG world, but for gaming in general. The world they created is well crafted and feels complete. The characters have depth and are interesting. The combat is a blast with all the variations, and I can't get over the amount of choice and replayability you have here. Currently, Avowed is only on Xbox and PC. Obsidian's Outer World 2 is set for release on both Xbox and PlayStation later in 2025, and Xbox has already began to walk back their exclusive titles, with Indiana Jones and the Great Circle set to release on PlayStation this spring, but no word as of yet on Avowed for Sony's console. But as soon as you can, check out Avowed by Obsidian. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a comment or hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, consider clicking the subscribe button now. We have more videos like this and have a weekly gamer news podcast called The Gamer Buff, with all the latest gaming news. Thanks again for watching. Until next time, this is the Dove.
Huh.